It's been the go-to choice for many smartphone photographers for about 9 months now. But the Nokia Lumia 920 has finally been ousted as king of the smartphone photography hill by the Nokia Lumia 1020. Or has it? I'm Michael Fisher. This is Pocket Now. Let's find out. When it launched in the winter of 2012, the Lumia 920 promised to bring Nokia's high-end PureView camera experience to Windows Phone. And it did that, at least in name. The device's optical image stabilization and excellent low-light camera performance served it very well. But its 8.7 megapixel resolution meant it couldn't replicate some of the more advanced features of the 41 megapixel Nokia 808. Enter the Lumia 1020. The long-awaited, long-rumored fusion of true PureView technology and Windows Phone, and the smartphone photographer's dream device. But with a hefty price tag of $299.99 on an exclusive AT&T contract in the US, is the 1020 really enough of an improvement over the much cheaper Lumia 920? Let's find out in this comparison. And make sure to follow Pocket Now on social media so you don't miss our full Lumia 1020 review coming soon. From the front, these devices look quite similar, notwithstanding the different casing colors of our review units here. The WXGA displays are identical in size at 4.5 inches, and the button configuration, earpiece and camera placement, and even carrier and manufacturer logos are placed in more or less the same places. On the front, the differences are in the details. The 1020's display is AMOLED instead of the 920's LCD technology, delivering the now familiar super saturated color and true blacks, along with much improved side visibility. The protective layer atop the screen is made of newer third-generation Gorilla Glass as well, which should offer greater scratch protection. Along the sides, the Lumia 920's ceramic buttons have been replaced with aluminum ones on the 1020, and the speaker ports have also been condensed into a single row off to one side, making room for a lanyard hole for all you wrist strap users out there. We were sad to see the Nokia Smile eliminated on the 1020, the top and bottom bearing a much more symmetrical cross-section than the 920's. But it takes looking around back to see the biggest hardware change. The tidy and minimalistic lozenge-shaped camera bezel of the 920 has given way to a massive aluminum disc in the center of a flared crater that totally dominates the backside of the 1020. While the 920 featured a holistic and balanced, artistic back cover design, the 1020 is comparatively brutal. It's almost funny in its complete lack of subtlety. There's no question that the centerpiece of the 1020 is its 41 megapixel camera. The only other detail on the phone's back cover is the dual contact point for the wireless charger attachment, something not needed by the 920, and a concession Nokia made to get the 1020's mass down. On that subject, let's talk about how they feel in the hand. At 158 grams, the Lumia 1020 is much lighter than the 185 grams of the Lumia 920, and that's pretty evident when you pick these devices up. Now, it's not light enough to seem cheap. In fact, the polycarbonate casing feels quite premium in the hand, especially considering that all the 1020 color options are offered in a matte finish, instead of the gloss found on some of the 920 colors. The 1020 can't win all the points, though. It's impossible to overlook that camera bump on the back side. While it's easy to feel it out with a fingertip due to the surrounding flare in the casing, it definitely sits right where your fingers want to go when holding the phone in portrait. Now, while it's much easier to avoid getting a fingertip in the lens on the 1020 than it was on the 920, there's no denying that the camera hump makes the newer phone the more awkward one to hold, and the more awkward one to place on a tabletop as well. Under the hood, there's an interesting mix of similarities and differences, which make clear that the 1020 is not just a 920 with an 808 camera bolted on. To start with, the embedded batteries are different. While they boast the same milliamp hour rating, they output at different voltages, and they therefore carry different watt-hour ratings. Nokia's official specs bear this out, and they cite different values for many scenarios with each device. See our full review when it lands for more detailed battery endurance information. Each device is powered by the familiar dual-core Qualcomm Snapdragon S4 running at 1.5 GHz, augmented by 32 gigs of non-expandable storage. Out of box, there's between 24 and 26 gigs free on each. The 1020 does pack an extra gig of RAM for 2 gigs total, and it also adds a barometer to the 920's sensor package of accelerometer, compass, and gyroscope. The rest of the loadout, from Wi-Fi to 3G to 4G to Bluetooth to NFC, is common between the devices. In terms of the general Windows Phone 8 experience, these devices offer very similar experiences outside the camera, which we'll get to in a second. That said, the 1020 does ship with Windows Phone's GDR2 package alongside Nokia's Amber update. Among other improvements, the new software gives you the ability to adjust display color saturation and temperature to your liking. It also includes some fun usability bonuses. There's a persistent clock called Glance Mode on the standby screen, together with the option to double tap to unlock the phone, which is nice. If you're a fan of terrestrial radio, there's good news here as well, because the updates uncripple the FM radio functionality of Nokia's Lumia devices. Nice touch. Now, while these upgrades are a little feather in the 1020's cap for now, some Lumia 920s are already receiving their update packages as this video hits the feeds, so it won't be long before this particular advantage is nullified on AT&T. So, 920 owners, rejoice. We said before that the camera was the unquestioned centerpiece of the Lumia 1020's hardware, and guess what? That's true in software as well. Where the 920 ships with just the bare-bones Windows Phone camera app, the 1020 comes out of the box with no fewer than 3 camera shortcuts: the traditional Windows Phone app, alongside Nokia Smart Cam and Nokia Pro Cam. Now, the stock Windows Phone 8 camera is nothing special, and frankly, we wonder why it's even included. Nokia Smart Cam might best be thought of as a value pack, wrapping a lot of individual lenses into one title so you can capture action shots, remove unwanted photobombers, and so on. But it's the Nokia Pro Cam app which drives the 1020's massive 41-megapixel shooter, and it's this app you'll be using most often. Thankfully, pressing the camera shutter defaults to Pro Cam out of the box. Just be ready to wait about 1.5 seconds longer for the heavier app to load and for the camera hardware to engage on the 1020 versus the 920. After all, you don't get something for nothing. We'll have a separate video going in-depth on all the features of the 1020's various camera apps, so here we'll just focus on how it compares to its predecessor. We put these phones side by side and we fired off a bunch of photos using out-of-box defaults. That's 8-megapixel resolution with auto settings on the 920, and a special dual shooting mode on the 1020 that captures both a 5-megapixel JPEG and a full-resolution 34-megapixel photo for editing purposes. In the low-light conditions that made the 920 famous, the results are still impressive with default settings. But it also becomes evident how the 920 almost tries too hard compared to the 1020's dimmer but clearer shots. The simple fire and forget action of the 920's camera in low light is still excellent, and it's actually more convenient if you don't like fiddling with settings. But the 1020 is capable of truly stunning low-light photography if you know what you're doing. Or even if you just read the tutorials. In more conventional lighting, the differences are less dramatic, but still significant once you look closely. On average, the 1020 produces colors which are deeper and more true to life than the 920. And of course, the higher resolution means far-off detail like text is almost always much more readable with the newer phone. The higher resolution also allows for one of the hallmark tricks of the Lumia 1020, the lossless zoom. That, together with the 1020's much more customizable focus, exposure, and white balance settings, means the phone is capable of some truly beautiful photos, well beyond the reach of its predecessor. In terms of video, results were comparable in a side-by-side walking test. The image stabilization worked quite well on each phone, with each one delivering crisp, colorful 1080p video with rich, full sound. The 1020 lagged behind the 920 in terms of adjustment speed, taking just a bit longer to automatically adjust focus and exposure, but otherwise the video performance between these phones was right on par. The remaining differences between these devices are pretty minor. Callers said we sounded similar in voice testing, and all the standard functions of a smartphone, from texting to tweeting to browsing, worked almost identically on each device. The added gig of RAM might help the 1020 in some of its more ponderous tasks, like running the heavy camera apps, but in everyday use, these phones don't perform all that differently. The real dividing line, as you might have expected, is the 1020's onboard barometer. Just making sure you were paying attention. No, of course, the primary difference here is the camera. And though the 920's shooter is still an excellent choice, and still outperforms almost any other on the market, the 1020's camera absolutely schools it, in every aspect but simplicity. Sure, the 1020's raw images will take up more room, and the camera's hardware and software are definitely more cumbersome, but in return you get a camera that will literally outperform any other smartphone camera that has ever existed. Whether that's worth an extra $200 on contract is, as always, up to you. But given the generational leap in camera performance that the 1020 represents, we think the pricing is just right. Listen, if you want to save money on a solid camera phone, the Lumia 920 is still an excellent choice, especially since it'll also eventually get the Pro camera software update. But if you're looking for the closest possible thing to a professional-grade photography experience on a smartphone, there's just no comparison. The Lumia 1020 is the device for you. Folks, we're still comparing the Nokia Lumia 1020 against other devices on other platforms, and we're giving you in-depth feature explorations just as quickly as we can make them, both here on YouTube in video form and in text form at pocketnow.com. So visit our channel page here, visit our website, but before you go anywhere, please do leave us a like if you did enjoy the video. Drop us a comment below if you have something to say, and if you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to our channel. Until next time, this has been Michael Fisher with Pocket Now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.